Welcome everybody to Banana Bread Trades. My name is Goose and today we are going to do a full in-depth tutorial of where I look to take trades and what I look for at those zones to determine whether to go long or short. What are we looking at? Well, the main thing we'll be looking at is initial balance. And then at initial balance, we're going to be looking at delta and time in sales and how you can use those two tools to determine whether or not it is a good time to get into a trade. Don't worry, I will explain what all of this stuff is, and then at the end, we're going to go over some real-time examples, and I will walk you through what my thought process would be and how all this stuff looks real time. So let's get right into it and let's have some fun. All right, so before we get too deep into this, let's talk about what is delta and what are the different ways we can watch it. Well, delta is simply just the difference of market buys and market sells at a given data point. And the ways to watch it would, number one, be a footprint chart. Now these are the numbers and boxes that you see here in the middle of the screen. Now don't get too freaked out here. This is simply just a 5-minute chart, but instead of a candlestick, we show the total delta value at that price within that time. Now I don't use the footprint chart for delta, but I know a lot of people that do and have success with it. Next would be delta by price, and that's what you see here on the right. This is very similar to volume profile. However, instead of volume at each price, we're showing the total delta value at each price for whatever given session that you have it selected for. Next would be delta by candle, and this is where we see the delta flips at. This shows you the total amount of delta within each given candle. And as that candle is being posted and as we approach levels of interest, we can watch the fluctuation of that delta to kind of determine whether or not buyers or sellers are stepping in. The final way to watch delta would be cumulative delta, and that's here at the bottom. This is very similar to delta by candle. However, it also shows you the total value of delta throughout the day. Now, I do not use cumulative delta because I sometimes find it to be very misleading. As volume changes throughout the day, the total value of delta may or may not become irrelevant. And people like to trade divergences of delta, but if volume of delta is dropping or your volume of the day itself is dropping, that divergence may be very misleading. So unless it's happening within like the first hour or 2 hours of the day, I really do not like to watch cumulative delta. All right, so here's an overview of the example we will be looking at today. Before we hopped into market replay and show you the delta and everything real time, I figured it best to give you an idea of the setup that I usually look for every single day and the setup that I expect to see delta flips at and make my trades. Now, what is this setup? It's initial balance. What is initial balance? Initial balance is the data acquired in the first hour of the regular trading session. So for me, market opens at 8:30 a.m. So between 8:30 and 9:30, I am looking for the high and the low. This high and the low would be initial balance high and initial balance low. Statistically, these two levels are fantastic levels of support and resistance, right? So as we approach these levels, I am looking for delta to flip from maybe being really green, like in this example, delta should be really green as we approach initial balance high because there's lots of buying. In the delta flip, I want to see delta flip to negative, showing that lots of sellers are stepping in at initial balance high, and then I would take the opportunity to get short, right? But as you can see, eventually we do break back above initial balance high. So once we are above initial balance high, we then expect the retest of initial balance high to be a level of support, and we will then be watching for a delta flip there, delta being really negative because you will be selling down back to initial balance high. We then at initial balance high want to see delta flip to greens, as in buyers are stepping in. And if we see this, we then want to get long. As we talked about in our initial balance video, statistically, if initial balance high holds, we should uptrend the rest of the day. Now that we have an idea of what initial balance is and what to be looking for, we can hop into market replay and show you these delta flips happening in real time. All right, here is our market replay, and before we get to our level, let's talk about what is all on our screen right here. The very left chart is a footprint chart, a bid-ask footprint chart. The white blocks indicating finished auctions and the green blocks indicating unfinished auctions. And what are we using this for? Well, let's say we get to initial balance high and we're posting the high of day. I want to see the high of day be a finished auction, right? Meaning there are no more buyers at the high of day. Because statistically, there's a high probability that if there's an unfinished auction, meaning there are still buyers at the high of day, that level will be broken and we will go higher the same day. So if I'm looking to take a short, I don't want there to be any reason to think that we will go any higher the rest of the day. Now, on the bottom side of this chart, we have the volume and we have our delta by candle. Now, this is what we will be watching to see the delta flip. So keep your eye on this as we get close to initial balance high. On the right, we have just a standard 5-minute chart. And this also has volume and delta on the bottom. It also gives us an overview of the whole day and where we are in respect to initial balance. In the middle here, we have time and sales. And what this is showing us here in this upper time and sales is just the raw order flow going through. So this is just showing us the rate basically at which buys and sells are going through and what size they are. Now down here on the bottom, we have time and sales again, but I have the 100 filter in. And when we get to a level of interest and the time and sales starts going really fast, it gets hard to see those really big orders. So I wanted to be able to see whenever orders of 100 or more are going through to see where the big players are stepping in at. We're going to speed it up just slightly here, and we're going to watch at initial balance for 2 criteria. One, initial balance has to post, meaning that hour has to be done. Then after that hour is done, we need to make sure that there is a finished auction at the top, meaning there's a white box at the high of day, whatever that high of day is. So now initial balance has been posted. We are watching to make sure there's a white box at the top. A finished auction is at the top. All right. So there's a finished auction at the top. Now we start watching delta like a hawk, right? We want to see delta flip negative. It's really green right now. There's over 1,000 delta. We see this delta start dropping. Okay, it's getting more aggressive. We want to get short at this point if we're not already. We want to see this delta continue to stay red. And now we want to see that flush and move away from initial balance high. If we are short right now, we're going to move our stop to just above this 5-minute wick and expect to get at least 5 to 10 point move away from initial balance high. My personal take profit is always at about 5 points. Statistically, that has a high hit rate. So depending where I'm at from initial balance, I will try to get short right at initial balance. If not, I may have to adjust my take profit. But 5 points is generally what I do. I just go for the scalp, the high probability setup. So for a continuation, we want to see the second and third 5-minute candle also be heavy negative delta. And that's what we're getting right here. We're getting that flush. We're getting that continuation. So we have plenty of confidence to hold. It may chop around for a little bit at initial balance high, but we stay patient. We have our stop in place, and we're going to trust our strategy. We're going to trust the statistic. And at this point now, we probably would have reached our 5 points away from our entry, or at least been very, very close. So if we're not out of our short yet, we only need maybe 1 or 2 more points to get that fill of that take profit. Now we have hit 933. We have a double bottom. We're confident that that double bottom will break. Double bottoms often get broken. That shows that there's a lot of interest in that level, even if it is still finished auctions that broke. Now we have moved 8 points away from initial balance high. This is a successful trade according to our 5-point scalp strategy. So now we wait for the next setup. We got our first initial scalp from initial balance. every test of a level that you get, there's a higher likelihood that that level will break. So the second, third, and fourth tests of initial balance high, right, have a less and less chance each time of actually holding. So if we get this first scalp in, then I'm usually very cautious to take any more. I'll probably take my bag, go home, and wait for another clean setup. And one other thing you can do to watch these second and third tests is watch delta. Do we get a delta flip at this second test of initial balance high? Right now, delta's pretty high. It's starting to get slapped there. It's starting to go negative. And if you wanted to, you could take another short right here. You see that delta flip happening at the level. You see those sellers stepping in at that level. Now, in hindsight, we do know that we do go higher, but in the moment we see that delta flip, we have a clear point of invalidation. So we would take that trade. Now, maybe right here we would get stopped, right? It's going to push higher than that previous wick. If you had a runner, sadly, she's dead now. But that's okay. We got that initial 5-point move away from initial balance. Now we are breaking above initial balance. Now we stay patient. Now we see delta has flipped really green. We have over 2K delta, lots of buying going on above initial balance. We are going to sit flat and chill. We're going to sit on our hands. Wait, we see all this buying coming in on time and sales. Let's go ahead and wait, let price move for a while. And then if we come back to initial balance, we will then start thinking about a long. But for now, the short play of initial balance is over. We're above it, and we have to wait and see. Now, after one of the worst barcoding events in the history of the S&P 500 Futures, it's finally time for price to break down and come test initial balance high. In the moment, we don't know this is happening, but we're waiting for it. You can see delta's kicking in. It's pretty negative right now, and we are waiting for price to get close to initial balance high. Now price is starting to get close, but we have really heavy negative delta still. We are not getting long at any moment in time yet. Now price is starting to move away a little bit, but delta is still really negative. We're too far away from initial balance high to take a trade with appropriate risk reward. Delta hasn't flipped green yet. It's starting to flip a little bit here, but like I said, it's all way too far away now. In the moment, we think we missed the trade, and that's okay. It didn't do what we wanted it to do. It didn't do the thing that gives us the statistical advantage, so we sit on our hands. I would also like to add that because this is not going to be the low of day when we go test initial balance high, that the finished auction statistic is not weighted as heavily. If it is high of day or low of day, an unfinished auction will most likely get filled the same day. Since this is not low of day or high of day right here that we're testing at initial balance high in this moment, we can't necessarily use that statistic to our advantage. Now here we go, we're heavy negative delta, looking for a delta flip. And there it goes green. At this moment, we want to try to get long. We see delta start to really flip green here now. We have good risk reward. We can get long with a stop right there below initial balance high. We want to give ourselves a little bit room so we won't put it right there below the wick, just in case we do actually test initial balance high, but we're close enough that the risk reward makes sense. So now we want to see buyers continue to step in, watching time and sales. We see lots of big buyers stepping in. So now we hold for either our 5-point scalp, or because we know there's a high statistical probability that if initial balance high holds, that we will uptrend, we may want to hold a runner, maybe some micros, or if you're holding multiple contracts, hold one contract for the possibility of an uptrend into close or the rest of the day. One target that I like to have is if there is an unfinished auction at the high of day, when we go back and test initial balance high, that will usually be my long target after the retest. So price would come down, test initial balance high. I would get long with that target being that unfinished auction at the high of day. Well, however many points that is what I'm aiming for. And that there, folks, is how I trade initial balance almost every single day. It's not always this pretty, but by using delta flips, volume, heat map, time and sales, and all the other tools at our disposal, we can take an already statistically profitable support and resistance level and make it even better. Well, if you have made it this far through, thank you very much for watching the entire video. I appreciate it a lot, and I hope that it helped you. If it did, didn't, or if you have other ideas on how you should trade the setup, please comment down below. If you like the video, please like it. If you want to see more stuff, hit the subscribe button. If you have more questions, please join the Discord. There's a lot of really awesome people in there. We have all sorts of awesome educational content and stats that we like to keep and record in the Discord. As well as, like I said, if you have questions, there's lots of other verified traders in there that you can talk to. It's all free. It's a great place to hang out, and I hope to see you there. And yeah, thank you very much, and we hope to see you in the next one.